stretching for results he prefers rather than those the law demands.
That's Neil Gorsuch, who was tapped as for Donald Trump as the Supreme Court nominee, and the confirmation hearings begin in Washington. And on the Senate Judiciary Committee is our next guest, the pride of Plainview, Nebraska, population 1,200, United States Senator from the great state of Nebraska, Ben Sasse. Senator, welcome to the Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
McGraw, thanks for having me on, and thanks for the shout-out to Plainview. That's rare.
Well, I am a Husker class of 1990, so you and I are somewhat kindred spirits, I want you to know.
Beautiful. Well,
go Big Red. It seems like Democrats don't have the stomach for a fight. They can only fight so many fronts, and it looks like they don't have the stomach to fight Neil Gorsuch. Is that the way you're seeing it?
Well, I sure hope that's true, because there's no partisan reason to be fighting about a Supreme Court justice nominee who believes that the oath of office means your job isn't to be a Republican or a Democrat, but to be a judge who upholds the Constitution. So I hope you're right. I'm not sure how to make some of the positioning some of the folks have done over the course of the weekend heading into today's hearing kickoff, but Gorsuch is a judge's judge, and every American ought to be applauding him.
I mean, Democrats are just sort of, it seems from me, it just seems like a lot of sour grapes. They lost. McConnell played all the right notes. He held off. He gambled. He won big. So to the victor goes the spoils.
I think that your political analysis may well be right in history's eyes when we look back at it. I just think about it from the standpoint of, do our kids understand civics? Do our kids know why we have three branches of government? And all the data shows that they don't. And what judges should do is be people who uphold the Constitution. They shouldn't try to be super legislators. And Merrick Garland is, a wonderful human being, but he's not going to be put on the court. And Neil Gorsuch is the guy we have before us to consider, and he is going to end up on the court, and we should explain to our kids why this guy, and why does he uphold the right oath? Why does he understand what a judge's job is? And that's the guy that we get to consider now, and it's pretty exciting.
But a lot of people talk about judicial review and overreach, and really isn't that just depending on what side of the aisle you're on, if you're for or against it, right? I mean, everyone talks about judicial overreach and a activist judge, but an activist judge is a judge who votes against your point of view.
I don't think so, humbly. What a judge's job is to decide the cases in front of him or her, and they should be recognizing, regardless of what their personal preferences are late at night when they're watching ESPN and they take off their robe, regardless, you ran the clip, the quote running in, of Judge Gorsuch saying that, he doesn't get smarter because he's wearing a robe, and if you come home and you like every decision you got to make that day, you're probably a bad judge. You're probably not a judge. You're probably a partisan, and you're probably a super legislator. But when you put on your robe, what you recognize is it's a black robe. It's not a red one for Republicans and a blue one for Democrats where you're fighting for particular policy outcomes. It's that all Americans should believe in a Bill of Rights and all these anti-majoritarian sort of pre-political commitments we have as Americans. And it's not their job as a judge to try to get to certain policy outcomes. If they want that job, they should run for office so the people of Missouri can hire them or fire them.
Ben Sasse, Senator from Nebraska, you ran as an anti-establishment Republican and won big. And now you find yourself in a somewhat interesting position because you have been critical of Donald Trump. You have written things and said things like we are in the midst of a civilization warping crisis of public trust about our president. You had a somewhat contentious town hall meeting over the weekend. What are your thoughts? And I would hate to read your mail, but what are your thoughts as you go into this week with this wiretapping scandal, the health care on the rocks? What are your thoughts as somebody who is an anti-Trumper in the party?
Well, first of all, I'm not a regular politician in that I don't think Washington is the center of the world. I think Plainview, Nebraska is, and Omaha and Lincoln and St. Louis and Kansas City, the places where people actually raise kids and where they actually figure out ways to build a better mousetrap and serve their neighbors in places where they worship, that's the center of the world. And Washington is supposed to be a community of servant leaders that exist to provide a framework for ordered liberty, but not try to solve everything that's wrong in life, because that's not government's job. And so I'm one of 5 people in the Senate who's never been a politician before, and it gives me a different perspective on this stuff, where I think I'm the 3rd or 4th most conservative person here by voting record, but I certainly don't start by being very impressed with either of these political parties. They're not very good, and they don't have a lot of solutions to all the big stuff that our kids are going to face 10 and 25 years in the future with an economy that's changing really rapidly. So I'm very worried that Washington doesn't know how to do a small number of really important things. It does a crappy job at this sort of broad range of things where usually people in Washington haven't even defined what problem we're trying to solve together before they start yelling at each other. So I'm skeptical of both of these political parties. That doesn't start with skepticism of any one individual. It starts with the skepticism of government consolidation of power, which, oh, by the way, was the founders' vision as well. So I come into every week. I fly from Nebraska to D.C. on Sunday night or Monday morning, and I get to bring one of my 3 little kids with me most weeks. So I'm pretty anchored in that I want to get back to Nebraska. I'm here to serve. It's an important calling, but the center of the world is Nebraska or Missouri, and it's the places where people live. So I think we should have more people that serve in public life that don't want to do it forever and don't think it's the highest and best calling, because the highest and best calling your listeners have is raising their kids today.
Ben, what do you think should happen with health care? Is this current plan workable? What are your thoughts? Because you might have to vote on this.
Yeah, there are a bunch of things in the bill coming out of the repeal and replacement of Obamacare plan coming out of the House. There are a bunch of things in it that are very good. There are a number of things that I think are really inadequate, and then there's a lot of stuff that's just not yet defined yet. I think Speaker Ryan has said they're going to vote Thursday night, and the bill's going to evolve a lot over the next 72 hours is my gut. But big picture, where should we be heading? We should be heading to a world where American families can buy the insurance policies that they want, not ones that bureaucrats defined all the parameters on, and they should be policies that can go with them across job and geographic change. Contrary to popular belief, the number one reason for growing uninsurance in America over the last 25, 30 years is not socioeconomic status. It's not poverty. The main reason we've had more and more uninsured people is because people change jobs. And right now there's a tax accident that gives people a tax break that makes it far more likely that you get insurance if you work for a big employer group than if you're a farmer or a rancher or a small business person. And yet the jobs of the future are going to be smaller and smaller, shorter duration jobs. And so we should create a world where they can keep policies as they change jobs and geographies. This bill makes some strides that way, not nearly enough from my point of view.
Certainly understandable, but as somebody who's in radio who sure does like when the job subsidizes my health insurance. When I don't have my job, my COBRA goes through the roof. So I don't have the money to subsidize my health insurance that the company did while I'm out of work or going for that new job.
Yeah, great point. So part of the problem is that COBRA still assumes, so when I say I want more portability, it isn't just COBRA. We need a lot better than that. We need to actually have health insurance. And right now, we mostly don't have insurance in the health sector. We mostly have the collectivized prepayment of benefits for things that are largely behaviorally driven and quite predictable. Diabetes is an example. We've got about 24 million diabetics in America. A couple million of them are non-behaviorally driven, but the vast majority are actually behaviorally driven. Those kind of problems are going to require different types of innovations that today's insurance system, the health financing side of healthcare, isn't nearly nimble enough to provide. We should want a world where we distinguish more between kinds of healthcare expenditures and needs that are predictable and kinds that are catastrophic and unpredictable. We could talk a lot about how in property and casualty, we've never thought about doing something as stupid as passing a law that says if you want to buy an Allstate or a State Farm policy, they have to make sure that Allstate and State Farm schedule all your Jiffy Lube appointments and buy all your gas. Functionally, that's what we try to do in healthcare, and that's why if we don't feel like if you had a Jiffy Lube run by Allstate and State Farm and all these third-party bureaucrats Jiffy Lube wouldn't be open the right hours. It wouldn't be the right places. It wouldn't cost the right amount. There wouldn't be quality measurement. That would be a lot like American healthcare. And so we need to distinguish more between what we're really trying to insure against and the parts that we shouldn't. It doesn't make economic, rational sense for me to try to figure out how to insure against my contact lens purchases for next year when it's perfectly predictable to the cent what it's going to cost, and when, as an upper middle class guy, I should be paying for my own contact lens purchases.
Ben Sasse, you're always welcome here, United States Senator from the great state of Nebraska. Senator, thanks for checking in.
McGraw, thanks for the time.
7:15.